welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drew B. Wilson. With more than 2 decades in sales, I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing it to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest job on earth. Doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type, you can carve out an amazing life in sales. And today's guest is no stranger to that journey. I'd like to welcome Mr. Larry G. Dix II. Welcome to the show.
Great to be on, Drewby. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, I'm grateful. I'm excited just based on our offline conversation. I know it's going to be a great one, so I want to jump right in, man. What's your crazy sales story?
So my first one is, I'll give you a quick backdrop. I started off as a yard dog. So by 21, I'm the youngest outside salesman in the history of this company. By today's standards, would be about $100 million company, about 350 employees at the time. And so I was born a sales guy. My mom said I was a sales guy since I was 3 because I was talking to adults. My first, kind of one I remember is that I go on my first sales call, right? And back then you dressed nice. You had a starch shirt on, khaki pants, shined your shoes, right? And I walk in and I hand the guy my proposal. And this is on lumber, right? So there's 50 items on there. And he looks at it, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. And he goes, your price is too high. And I can remember just like, I didn't know what to say. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And I kind of just walked out with my tail between my legs. And so I go back and my salesman, I'm like, he goes, well, how did it go with, I think his name was Keith Brown. And I said, well, he said our price for 2. And he goes, well, what did you say? And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. And that's when it was the first moment that I learned. He goes like, well, did you talk to him about KD19? I'm going to throw some adjectives. Nobody's going to understand her. And I'm like, no. And he goes, well, that's because our kiln dried, prime cedar was kiln dried to 19%. We, partially air dried is what everybody else sells. What was about our treated materials? So he goes down this thing. And that was my first like, oh crap, you got to know your product line. And I went back and then that was my first time where I just started learning, CCA, what it stood for, what the acronyms for. And then when I get into stuff, I learned how to muddy the water and get them questioning things in their minds. And then they'd be like, well, maybe he's not high because he's selling me a better product. I remember that as my first sales call. And I just got punched in the nose and I'm 21 years old. This guy was probably 40, which was intimidating. And that was kind of my aha moment in sales. And then that was when I learned at that moment, know your product. And then when you can do that, it just drives you right. You just get up in people and they can't say no.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I am one of those people that, like, usually when I'm going in to buy something, I've already done the research. I already know there's 7 different kinds out there. I picked this one very specifically. And Larry, I can tell you without a doubt, I have walked out of multiple businesses because the person who was supposed to be selling me the product didn't know what it was. And so when I started asking those little minute questions about it that like weren't available publicly, they would kind of just look at the little placard and read right off the bullet points. And I'd just go, all right, you're not my guy. And I'd walk out. And so I love the idea of know your product. Right? What separates you from every other competitor out there? What makes your product special? What gives it that extra little value that people don't understand because they don't know what they don't know yet? And at 21 years old, in the old days, dressed up, nice suit and tie, selling lumber, there's definitely like a disconnect from the guy who works the lumber yard that's building the homes versus the guy who shows up in the shiny new shoes.
That's right.
So in your journey of sales, like what have you figured out? Like what are the mindset shifts and the routines that you had to go through in order to go from like not really being prepared to being at the level you're at now?
So the great thing for me was I had to learn a different way than we do today, right? Like you go into Lowe's, it's very frustrating, and maybe I shouldn't say their name, but you go in there and ask somebody where something is. The first thing they do is they pull up their phone and they locate it, right? Instead of knowing where the product is because they know the store. And so we used to listen to tapes. I mean, my favorite, America's Salesman was Zig Ziglar. We were listening to cassette tapes while driving down the road, constantly educating yourself, which is what I learned how to do. And I would learn these things from the best, the professionals, the guys that have already figured this stuff out. Sales is not something new. As you said, it's the greatest job in the world. We're true entrepreneurs and, 100% sales guys where you're 100% commission, you're motivated. Like if you don't make your sale, you don't make any money. And so I just always drove, even today, I'm 62 years old. I like to say a 62-year-old overnight success. I've owned a manufacturing company for 25 years. I'm still learning. Like I'm studying stuff. We've got, AI, things like that. And I think sales guys get into a rut where they just think, oh, well, I've got this. You better be learning because things are shifting and your customer now has access to the same information you have. So you may say something, I'll BS this guy through. And they're like, it's funny. I was on their website and I noticed that's not what they said. They said that this could be how, the nailing pattern or the installation part, or, oh, you can't cut it that way. And, you have to have, OSB behind it or something like that. And then you look like a complete idiot and they've caught you and then your
Amen.
credibility is gone.
Ooh, so I want to lean in on this for a second because the Zig Ziglar and the old G's will always say they got to know you, they got to like you, they got to trust you. And as you just said, with the amount of knowledge that's available right at our fingertips in a moment's notice, the ability to create trust in sales is at an all-time necessary high. People are more educated, they've done more research than ever before, so you cannot walk into any scenario and not be prepared. And one of the things that I learned early on is it's okay not to have every answer. One of my mentors always said, "Hey man, the wisest people on the earth don't have the answer to every
That's
question,
right.
but they know where to go looking for them."
That's
And
right.
so, in your journey as you, scaled this company, 25 years in the business, like how do you take that energy that you have for knowledge and growth and development and make sure you're passing it on to your team?
So my team is, I trademarked a term called do what's right. Okay, so we're all about the long ball. We're not trying to, I tell everybody we're trying to get rich, not, we're trying to create long-term wealth, not get rich. And so
Mm,
one of the things that we do at Apex is we have a very high sense of urgency. And if we don't know an answer, we go find the answer. It's a high sense of urgency, and you call them back with the information. And that
mm,
creates that connectivity because now what happens is everybody is so complacent. There's just this we have extremely high energy. If we have a problem, we fix it. We don't go, well, whose fault was it? You fix the problem. You create a high sense of urgency because the way I look at it, because we're going to build stuff wrong. I tell people that, like, we're going to make mistakes. I said, but we're going to have the best attitude doing it. And they're like,
mm,
they always look at that. I'm like, because if there's a problem on a job site, if we can fix it the next day, a week from now, they don't remember that problem. You let that thing fester because you're trying to, oh, well, it's, Drewby's fault. Well, no, it's your fault, Larry. No, it's Drewby's fault. And then we're Thursday and it started on Monday. People are starting to get pissed off. So that's what we really just like, whatever it takes, extremely high sense of urgency, customer service. Our website says we are a customer service business that manufactures roof and floor trusses. But the first thing is we're customer service. And I think there's
ooh,
going to be a national wave coming back to that. Because I tell people all the time, I get pissed off calling people trying to give them my money and they won't even call me back. And then you call them, is your favorite thing, Jimmy? Oh, yeah, I was just fixing to call you. 3
yeah,
days
you were.
later, I'll start cussing here in a minute. I mean, it irritates me and I won't buy from them.
Yeah. Well, and that there's so many layers to this. I think
Yeah,
customer service, unfortunately, is at an all time low. I think people
terrible.
have lost the ability to genuinely care about other people because they become bitter. Because, we go out to eat and the restaurants are terrible, and then we go to a store, and as you just said, they're just pulling up their phone. They can't even talk to you. They're just staring at the device. Oh, it's in aisle 5. It's like, okay, have a great day. And they're like, yep. And then they just turn around and walk away. And so I think there's this definitely going to be a resurgence where people are going to
Absolutely.
lean back in on customer service being one of the most important aspects, not just in sales, but in business in general. And what I've learned is that customer service starts with you, right? You
Yep.
have to be
You set
energized.
the
You have to
example.
be fired up. Exactly. You have to
Mm-hmm.
set the example. And one of the things we talked about kind of offline that I think not enough people are doing is like getting up early and having a daily routine that sets themselves up for success. So you've been in the game a
Yes.
long time, man. Tell me a little bit about your morning routine and how you utilize it to get all that energy and be able to get out there and crush the day.
Yeah, so one of the things that people don't realize about me is I'm a keynote speaker. So one of them is the 4 Ds of success, and one of them is discipline. Well, what I talk
Mm.
about during that keynote is that I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. My feet hit the ground. I don't leave my bed. I bow my head and I pray. Then I go through this regimen of getting all of my supplements ready, get my coffee made. I put my coffee on for exactly 5 minutes. I'm not 4 minutes and 50 seconds, 5 minutes. And then I go through this. I read the Wall Street Journal, the local newspaper. I take all my supplements. I go to my barn. I read my Bible. I work out for an hour to an hour and 40 minutes every day, 7 days a week. I get in
Come
a
on.
red infrared. I go into a sauna for 12 minutes. Then I pray during that time as well. It's in a dark spot in a closet. I take a cold plunge right after that. And the way I look at it is by 9 o'clock, between 7 and 9, depending on what I've got going on, and sometimes I have to get up at 4 o'clock, and I build a foundation. So I always look at, like, by 9 o'clock, I've done more work than most people will do their entire day. And then I built this foundation. So when Drewby hits me, I'm like, dude, come on, I'll take you on, because my foundation is so stable. I'm mentally and physically so far ahead of you, you're not going to take me down. And then it doesn't affect your emotions and how you get a bad attitude. You're just like, dude, I'm rocking it. And that's my regimen every single day, 7 days a week. If I travel, it's the same exact routine every day. And
I
that sets the standard for everybody. And then when I walk in the room with my employees, they're always like, well, we know Dix is ready because he's already worked out for 3 hours. He's psychopathic, and you're not going to piss him off because he's in a great mood all the time, because I got all these endorphins and everything going on. And I'm like, I'm ready to roll. Let's drop and do 30 push-ups real quick. That's the way I look at life. And I'm just like hammered down. And I'm 62, and I'm
fired
like, I
up.
bring more energy than most, 30-year-olds.
Well, and there's a lot to unpack from that.
Yeah.
There's a book out there, 5 a.m. Club. I recommend everyone go pick it up and read it.
Okay.
Fantastic book. Um, and I'm a big believer. Like, so I've been a 4 a.m. wake up guy for probably going on 7 years. And I
Wow.
live by a strategy called the 4 6s. So I won't go into the long detail, but to me,
Yeah.
there's 4 areas of life that really matter. Rest and recovery is number one. We got our family and our relationships right there, number two. Then we got our business, because most of us still got to show up and work and take care of
Gotta
things every
eat.
day. Yep, got to eat. And then people put themselves at the bottom of the list, which is why they end up burnout, unhappy, dissatisfied, overweight, just like all the negative things that can happen to someone when they're not taking care of themselves first. And so my thought on it is, if you spend 6 hours in each of those categories, you're living about as balanced as a life as possible. And as you just said, getting up at 5, getting your day ready, having everything organized, being in the gym, getting your workout, getting those endorphins, that adrenaline, getting your body all movement, in there, all of a sudden you've got more energy than the rest of the world that slept till 9 a.m. Because they're still trying to get their freaking engine fired up. They're still drinking their,
Still
energy
drinking
drinks and trying to,
coffee.
yes,
Yeah.
trying to get things going. And
Yeah.
when you live and die by the calendar, what's awesome is you find that so much more gets done. As we were talking about, I got a schedule, I show up on time, I sing, I dance, I do what I'm supposed to do, and then I move into the next thing. So, like, what would you say, from all the things that you've learned along the way, the gratitude and reading the Bible, like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about success?
Well, so I wrote a book called Born or Made, Fear is a Liar, Defeat is Overrated. And
Mm,
what there, I have a podcast called Born or Made Podcast, and I'm gonna, hopefully we'll reciprocate. You'll be on mine. Love to have you on.
would love
And what
that.
I've learned is there are no shortcuts. Like you talk, I've interviewed 80 entrepreneurs in the last year and a half, and every one of them say the same thing. They're just hard workers. It's 10 times harder, because when I wrote the book, and my next one is called Built Not Born, and what I'm trying to do
Mm,
is just dispel this whole thing that, like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, everybody rides around a jet, everybody has a Lamborghini, everybody's got this, everybody's got that. And instead of like, yeah, I almost didn't make payroll last week, and my taxes came due, and I've got to get on a payment program with the IRS for the next 12 months to make my tax payments, and they're threatening to cancel my insurance. Or when during the housing downturn from 2008 2012, a dozen times they're setting it at my uh, electric meter outside my corporation and going, hey, we need you to pay us $800 or we're shutting off your electricity while my employees are standing there. And then I got to go in, it's fine. It got lost in the mail. I'm like, shit. I couldn't pay $800 electric bill, and that's the miss thing is everybody thinks it's all fun and games. And it's the most stressful, lonely thing out there. And, you get all this, I put in there, fear is a liar and defeat is overrated. And what everybody sees Drewby right now, you're at the peak, right? They see you through the success. But what they don't realize, the peak is narrow. This is the analogy I use in the book, is that you're either going in it or coming out of it 90% of the time. That peak is so narrow. And as soon as you get up there, you go, hey, and then boom, somebody hits you and down you go again, right? And that's what I learned through entrepreneurship is I thought I had it all figured out. And when I started my business, by 6 months, I was broke. Like I was broke. I didn't even know how I was going to make pay. I didn't have a line of credit. Going in and borrowing money from a bank. Oh, everybody does that. Bull crap. It's hard. And it's even harder now.
Well,
and rates are higher and there's no shortcuts. Oh man, no shortcuts.
Well, and
zero.
What's fun about that is like, I know that story all too well, have been through it, have ridden that ride of like, man, I don't know if we're going to make payroll, or, hey, we've got XYZ that's ready to come out on, Friday and it's Tuesday and that money ain't there. So we're going to have to get our hustle on to go and make it happen. And I think that's where, like you mentioned earlier, the discipline truly comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people will let that overwhelm stop them from doing anything. And the disciplined individual will look around, they'll observe what's going on, they'll all right, they're going to orient themselves in the direction they need to go. They're going to decide on what action to take. I think it's called the OODA loop. I think I stole that
OODA
from Jocko
okay.
Willink. Yep, the OODA loop. So it's observe, orient, decide, act. And so
okay,
the disciplined person is going to simply just look and say, all right, what's the first pillar to knock over? What's the first thing we got to do? A lot of times I'll tell them, hey, man, the answer to your money problems is to pick up the phone and call the damn leads. It's not as difficult as most people think, but they got to do it, right?
So we call it at our place is called make the cash register ring. So same thing.
Amen, brother. It's just about doing the work and that's
drive sales.
I'm curious on your perspective, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are 100% focused on like motivation. They're like, oh, we just got to get them motivated. And I'm a believer that motivation is limited in its ability to drive action. So what do you think is the difference between like motivation and discipline, and like how can people stay consistent on the days that they don't want to show up?
Well, I learned this through, and I've read some of this, and that's, I didn't make this up. I learned this through somebody else, is that, it's like discipline creates motivation. And when I heard that, I'm like, okay, bingo. You got to have discipline. I mean, I put that, I put my 4Ds as decision, discipline is second, but discipline is really number one. It just sounds better when you're flowing, is the number one motivator. If you've got people that are not drinking coffee till 8:00, they're showing up at 8:01. And instead, we used to be the old days. You probably remember these. On time was late. I mean, I still drive that to this day. I don't show up at 7:45. Like yesterday at my meeting, I had a bank meeting. I was at their bank at 10:40. My meeting was at 11:00. I'm sitting in the lobby waiting for.
They always told me, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late, and if you're going to be late, don't bother showing up.
Yeah, and I do that with people now, and so we just, it's, to me, it's just got to be motivation and how to do that. But it's you as I tell people in this scenario, this one, if I was a screamer in my company, everybody would be a screamer. If I use profound language and hammered everybody becomes, but instead everybody in my eyes, we treat each other with trust and respect. We're high sense of urgency. We are a sales company, but we are a customer service company that manufactures roof and floor trusses. So there's no like, and do what's right. Like if somebody's like, I don't know what to do, well, just do the right thing. If you do the right thing every time, you're not going to make a bad decision. And so for us, we've just created this from day one. So 25 years in, there's people, I have, my greatest success is I have 2 people that have retired from Apex in the last 2 years. I have 25-year employees still to this day. And so, because we just don't let that deviate. So when they come in and you got that marginal call And you got to be like, I could kind of get this guy. It might save me $1,000. Instead, do the right thing. Yeah, it's going to cost $1,000, but we're all going to sleep good tonight. And so I set the standard as the owner that that's the way we do everything. And that's how we drive sales. And every one of my employees, they hear it, make the cash register ring. You got to get sales. When I ran out of money, you know what I did? This is a great one, call the damn leads. I hired 2 salespeople. I literally did not know how I was going to pay them. But I knew I had to drive sales because I was the sales manager, the CFO, the CEO, the purchaser, designer. I was doing everything. And I talked to this old guy and he goes, Larry, you got to have salespeople. I'm like, I'm broke. He goes, hire salespeople. And I did. And one guy got $35,000 paid in advance for a job the first week. And I was able to cover payroll for a couple of weeks. And then I just did it again and again and again and again. And I just drove. Sales, baby. I'm all about it. My longest chapter in my book, all of them are like 4 or 5 pages. Sales is like 20. Because I'm like, man, I'm all about it. High sense of urgency. When you walk into a room, look around the guy's office. Does he have golf balls? Does he have pictures with his grandkids? Does he have a diploma or one of his kids graduated from Tennessee? And you can pick up these things. And then that's how you build these relationships. But most people now, they walk in and they just sit there. Well, here's my price. And then they make small talk. Hey, I noticed you have 3 grandkids. Where do they live? Are they here? Are they in Virginia? Are they in Florida? And you just make these connections, these human connections. And like, that's where you were talking about earlier. You go into these restaurants now, they just hand you a dadgum iPad. Well, what happened to customer service? They think, with AI, AI is going to change everything. They think there's going to be a massive shift away because people are going to want to have human interaction. Because you and I, as sales guys, we like human interaction. Now, we may want to be by ourselves. I'm by myself a lot, but we want that connection.
This is something I have talked at length about with so many different business owners and sales professionals. Everyone wants to use AI because it's the shortcut, right? It's like, I can fire all my sales guys. I'll just have an AI talk to people.
Nah.
Here's the deal. If you're like me and you're listening to this show right now, odds are you probably are, or you wouldn't keep coming back. Anytime you get on one of those things, you're smashing the 0 button or you're screaming, speak to a representative. Speak to a representative. Because there's no nuance there. There's no understanding. Even tonality can make all the difference, right? Someone could be saying something that you don't like, but if they're saying it in a kind voice in a way that's like disarming, it's going to bring you down from that level of anger or whatever it is that you're dealing with. And so while right now, yes, there are a lot of companies out there that are leveraging AI and it's working for them, the reason it's working for them is because they weren't doing the job previously. So they weren't picking up the phone. They weren't returning calls. So yeah, AI is filling that gap for the moment. But I know without a doubt in my heart of hearts, Lord strike me down if I'm crazy, AI is not going to replace your sales team. AI is not going to replace your service team. It may be a temporary fill-in for some areas, but 100% the need for good, genuine human interaction is going to come back, and it's going to come back in force. So all of you that are listening to this right now, focus on customer service. Like Larry said, it is the number one way to grow your business. And so, Larry, man, we could probably nerd out on this stuff like all day. I've loved this conversation. Absolutely. I love your energy. And would absolutely love to be a guest on your show if you'll have me. I think it would be fun.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Yeah. What's the best way for me and the listeners to come find you, follow you, check out more of your content, find your books, all that kind of fun stuff?
So my website is larrygdix.com, LARRYG, Dix, DIX.com. And then my podcast is bornormadepodcast.com. They all intertwine with each other and stuff like that. And then my book is Born or Made, Fear is a Liar, Defeat is Overrated. That's in everything. It's actually even a C-suite bestseller. We've done really well with that. And then be looking out for our next stuff. What's coming out is going to be, Built Not Born, which we hope to have finished by October 23rd, which will be our next big release. And love, we're coaching. I call it more, mentorship than coaching, but we do a lot. I've got a lot of business guys that reach out to us. We've got some great services there, and they can channel into some of my energy, especially sales, and help you build a business. I built, from 0 to an 8-figure business in over 5 years. I'm a big real estate guy. I raise beef cattle. I'm a keynote speaker. So, enough accolades about me, but I am very diverse in what I do. and I've taken money from making profits in things and developing things that are, cash flow businesses, and continue to build a quote long-term wealth. And that's what I strive towards.
I love it. And I'm going to ask you one last question. I already know
Yeah.
the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways before we get out of here. Were you born with all of those things, or did you build those through discipline?
So I was born a sales guy. That's the one thing I can do. My mom is since dead, but I remember, she said ever since she remembered 3 years old, I would talk to older people and just had a communication. I must have been somewhat born with some discipline thing, because now as I write a book, it's almost therapy. I started seeing this at a very young age, that I started was very disciplined kid. But there's so much of it is just trial and errors. I call it, you can be defeated or inspired, because you get punched and you got to make the decision. Are you going to take that and just go in a corner and crawl off and die or feel sorry for yourself? Or are you going to take that and channel the energy, which is what I do, into figuring out how to never let it happen again? So I'm on the claim. I'm a born and I was made, no question.
I love it. And listen, if you guys enjoyed the show today, make sure you go follow Larry, grab his book. I know I've got it written down. I'm going to be taking a look and keeping an eye out for that next release. Share this episode on social media. Tag the two of us. Let us know you enjoyed your time that you spent here. Heck, maybe even send it to somebody you know who sucks at customer service as a gentle reminder.
Yes, absolutely.
Just helping people out is what it's all about. And so we're truly grateful that you took the time to be here with us, Larry, today. It means the world.
Yeah, great day. Thank you so much. I really had a great time.
I love it. Well, listen, you guys know what to do next. After you send this episode, if you have a story of your own and you want to join us, go to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your details. Let us know about your story. Let's bring you on the show. Let's have some fun. And more than anything, go pick up the phone, call the damn leads, and take care of your people. We'll see you guys next time.
Love it.